a revenue-based model. So they are affecting social change and earning revenue. That's double the work. And the roadblocks, barriers, opportunities that they have are also multiplied. One of the things that we just launched last night, we've been working on it for several months, but we just launched last night, was a private peer advisory alliance. So we have 20 social entrepreneurs that are leading social change businesses in Central Ohio who get together once a month, and they're able to have that safe space. They're able to really talk amongst their peers and scale their ideas and impact in a place where they have like-minded people that they can talk to. And as an entrepreneur, I know how important that is to be able to have that safe space to move forward and have open discussions. The other things that we're doing, again, making sure that we're staying in our lane and staying laser focused, is when we're connecting resources. So we have a great partnership with CCAD, that they had students that were looking, their photography students, that wanted to create their senior portfolios. We have social enterprises that really wanted to be able to up their game in their marketing images. So we partnered together to provide 10 social enterprises a portfolio of professional images that they can use throughout their digital presence. CCAD won because their students have a really great resource, a new portfolio that they can show. Our social entrepreneurs won because they have a great library of marketing images, and we won as an organization to be able to come together.
You've both talked about, staying in your lane, and it's really hard as a leader. You want to take on everything. That's, you think I can, take on everything in front of me, and that's going to be helping me do my mission. So that really laser-focused piece about saying I have to say no to stay, to keep that fidelity to my core mission is really important. Greg, I want to hear a little bit from you about your kind of hard decision-making times.
Yeah, no, I think it's very much a similar theme, mission drift, and that's something that we're very cognitive of and looking at, making sure that we do what our mission and vision says and not be pulled to where maybe funding and other opportunities, look attractive. It's the shiny object syndrome. And so as Design Outreach, we really see ourselves as a humanitarian engineering organization, and it's not just focused on one technology, it's focused in WASH, so this is water and sanitation problems, it's agriculture, it's food security, seed storage, agriculture, farming, and it's global health, and it's medical devices. And so looking at that, and this is us, interacting with some of our peer organizations in international development, and these are some huge organizations in some cases. They can start off doing one thing and then become a full-on something else. And usually it's the way the funding goes. As an example, with our success and scaling of the Life Pump project and the technology around the world, the temptation is to become a water implementation organization where we're going after funding, and funding's coming to us, where we're scaling up, we're hiring dozens of field staff, vehicles, country offices. Instead, we're holding back and saying, no, our mission is to train and equip those other organizations so that we're just not reinventing the wheel and duplicating, which is hard because there might be like a big pot of money sitting there saying, hey, you can become somebody else if you take this money. And so that's something that we've had to be really careful. And I could speak on EOS as well. It's really funny as we were preparing for this, learning about Ann and the work that they're doing with EOS. It really, the thing that's kept us focused on that, laser focus, has been our team, and EOS has been a great tool for us as well, where maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we were still going through a lot of the growing pains. We were growing. We went from 3 or 4 people who were in sync step with each other to then 10 people to 20 people. Now we're up to 40 people, and it changes the dynamic significantly, especially when you overlay dozens of volunteers who do the engineering with us and working in different cultures in different countries. So it's allowed us to stay laser focused and stay accountable to those goals, and to be able to communicate that both to our financial partners, to our staff, our global staff, our board of directors. And I can't say good enough things about either, and I'm not getting paid just like Ann here.
Philanthropy Ohio, we've also begun implementing EOS, so unintentional through line here, but it is a wonderful tool. So I want to think a little bit more about those collaboration and partnerships piece. You guys have all talked about it a little bit, but I want to dive in a little bit more. Greater impact is possible when that laser focus includes meaningful collaborations, partnerships, and peer networks. So Vicki, could you share how Social Ventures nurtures and seeks to create partnerships with academia and private industry for that win-win impact that you talked about a little bit?
Sure. So I believe that we're stronger together, and whatever we're doing, whether it's personal or professional, learning what someone else is trying to drive forward and how we can come together to affect meaningful social change is how we make more momentum and create more traction. We are partnered with the Ohio State University on a sustainability project. So we have social entrepreneurs that are working with students at Ohio State to really look at the different aspects of their business and how sustainability can be integrated into each of those. So the win for those students is the opportunity to work directly with a social enterprise. The win for the entrepreneurs is to have that expertise and somebody who's focused specifically on sustainability to help. We also partner with Ernst & Young, where they have associates that want to be able to mentor financial entrepreneurial spirit. And so we partner those professionals with entrepreneurs who are seeking that type of financial advice. So you have an expert in finance in EY, and then you have an entrepreneur who are both really learning. And the impact is not only does the corporate team member and the entrepreneur learn something new about each other, but the understanding of collaboration as well as the understanding of social impact about how that corporate person was introduced to a business that's leading to do good. So we believe that everyone has an opportunity, whether they're an individual or a business, to make those intentional purchases that help change our world. I'll give an example of a large company here that was looking to have all of their businesses cleaned. They partnered, or they contracted with Clean Turn, that is a social enterprise that's based here in Central Ohio. Clean Turn helps people who have barriers to employment have jobs. And by doing that, the company got their business cleaned that they needed to do. And also it helped people have access to jobs and work that wouldn't have otherwise had those opportunities. So it multiplies on itself when we are able to collaborate in ways that innovate and help people think differently and engage in a new and more collaborative fashion.
Thanks so much, Vicki. And Star Works is the model that you use at Star House to partner with social enterprises. Can you tell us a little bit more about that model and the impact that you're seeing?
Sure thing. I'll start by defining the issue we are seeking to address with Star Works. After being at the drop-in center for 90 or more days, our working age youth, 84% obtain employment. Before the pandemic, it was 90%. So they're dispelling the myth that young people experiencing homelessness are homeless, quote, because they're too lazy to get a job. That's simply not the case. They're getting jobs all day long, but it's nearly impossible to keep those jobs until they get a steady place to lay their head every single night and steady transportation to get to work. As a result, they need flexible, transitional employment while they're in a state of transience and pathways to living wage, full-time jobs that they can sustain after they're housed. So StarWorks was created to address that gap. And the program is this. We have social enterprise partners who are offering transitional employment opportunities and that sync up with the current state of transience for our youth. When a social enterprise is just getting started, they can't offer 40 hours of employment for their employees every week. They can sometimes just offer a few hours a week. For our youth, they can't commit to 40-hour-a-week jobs, and so they're able to work flexibly when they can and how they can as they're working toward getting surefire housing. And we have 2 social enterprise partners now. One is represented here, Petals That Inspire. Amanda, if you want to wave here. Petals That Inspire is a floral business. Wild Tiger Teas is the other, a screen printing business. And our goal in the next several years is to have up to 20 social enterprise partners offering even more hours of employment for our youth on site at our locations. We also have workforce development partners that are connecting youth with training, certifications, and pathways to those full-time jobs that they can sustain later. So if you are a social enterprise or someone who's interested in partnering with us on this, you can reach out at starhouse.us, again, starhouse.us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne. So Greg, I want to bring you in. Design Outreach partners with folks from several industries and academia. So how are your partnerships better than the individual industry efforts to solve for social impact?
Well, we really see ourselves as Design Outreach as a think tank, and we bring together the subject matter experts necessary to solve problems that are global in nature. And these are some of the biggest problems facing our world today. So we need the subject matter experts, and in many cases, we need the subject matter experts that the subject matter experts go to. And we've seen those people come to us because these are not easy problems to solve. If there's a big problem in the world and there's a profit to be made, well, the for-profit world's going to step in and take care of that. But when there's a big problem in the world and there's little or no profit to be made, that's where the nonprofit world has to step in and social enterprise and so forth. And so what we've seen is we tackle a problem and we realize in the case of appropriate technology development, we need subject matter experts. We need people who know how to manufacture. Industry partners know how to manufacture and scale. Academia partners, and we've worked with several universities, including Ohio State, we know how to do research, but we're not scaling or manufacturing. And then we have nonprofit partners who have boots on the ground. They operate in the countries, they have the government connections, but they don't have an R&D department, and they don't know how to manufacture. They don't do that. That's not part of their social mission. And then you have donors, you have financial partners who want to see good things happen and be multiplied. So we see ourselves bringing together all of those elements, the best of each, and presenting a problem and asking them to join our team. And in our case, we don't have the funds to go and hire a company in many cases and say, hey, we'll hire you to do this thing. Instead, we go to them and say, would you like to change the world with us? And you see a bunch of nods just like this. It's hard to say no to that. And next thing we know, they start volunteering with us, and often it's the owners of the companies, it's the presidents, CEOs of the companies who we go to, they get excited with their executive teams, and it trickles down into their employees who are now benefiting from it personally because now they're involved, they get to have this change, this impact. And something about engineers, and I'm an engineer, I started my career at Battelle, and this is kind of where the model came from. A lot of engineers kind of move away from engineering at some point in their career. But they still have that desire to invent things and to build things and to be creative. And so it's a very attractive thing to ask engineers specifically to volunteer because they want to go back and they want to give back. And so we've benefited tremendously from that in our programming and being able to do the impossible. We're told many times it's impossible to do that. And then we have it done and we demonstrate it's possible. We're doing it.
Much. And I want to come back to that sort of how you refuel to do the impossible. But quickly, we're going to be moving to questions from our live stream and in-person audiences in just a few minutes. So if you have a question, please feel free to make your way to the microphone now. And before we start that audience question, I just want to ask you, in the preparation for this discussion, we talked a little bit about how leaders rely on many supports and connections to a higher purpose to continue to fuel their hearts and minds. And this purpose, often emanates from a faith relationship and fellowship with other faith-centered leaders to help maintain focus and commitment. So, Greg, Design Outreach shares the organization's statement of faith and values on the website. Can you share how that guides the organization's work and you as a leader?
Yeah, so Design Outreach was started with the premise that we're a Christian organization doing this work because we're motivated by our faith. And what that means for us is it also helps us set that standard of excellence. It's the golden rule. If it's not good enough for us, it's not good enough for others. And for us, Jesus set that example. He didn't half heal the blind man. He didn't feed half of the 5,000. He didn't walk on the water but sink down a little bit. He didn't turn the water into bad wine. He turned it into the best. So that's the standard. So why should we have anything less? And this is something that's very important to us, that we operate on what we call the abundance mentality. And so oftentimes the problems in the world exist today because we, as nonprofits across the board, operate what we call the scarcity mentality, which is you have a pie, let's just imagine the analogy, and you have a lot of needs. There's a lot of needs around us. And so what we try to do is slice that pie as thin as possible so everybody gets a crumb, but then nobody's needs are actually met. And the problems just come back, and they come back again, and we go and try again, but it's the same problem. I think Einstein said something like, to keep doing the same thing and expect a different result is insanity. So we look at that and say, number one, what is the right thing to do? What is that standard? And then number two, we pray for the resources to meet that standard. And I think that's a huge reason why we've seen the growth that we've had. Over the last 4 or 5 years, we've had about a 40% growth in revenue. We've seen our technologies being accepted at the national level in 2 countries in Africa. We operate in 11 countries now. We have dozens of industry partners. The resources continue coming to us, and I think a lot of it is not settling for that scarcity mentality, but saying what is the right thing to do and go to the higher power that can make it happen.
Thanks so much, Greg. And so in our last moments, would anyone else like to comment on their faith journey and its importance to their work?
Sure, I would. It's so refreshing to talk about faith in this setting, so thank you for asking this question. I mentioned at Star House, we work with a population of young people that are experiencing complex trauma, horrific traumas. Some have been locked in a basement. They've been pimped out by their own parents. They've been forgotten. And they've lost hope. They're disconnected from people and don't trust a soul. Something that has struck me over the years in our partnership with The Ohio State University and the research that they do is so many of the research points to the power of social connections that are founded on what academics call unconditional positive regard. In fact, these sorts of relationships are one of the greatest predictors of young people exiting homelessness. So what academics call unconditional positive regard, I call in my faith as a follower of Jesus, unconditional love. If you look at the teachings of Jesus, he talks about loving people who are vulnerable, so taking care of orphans and widows, refugees, and even loving our enemies and caring for our enemies. And so it's really striking to me that what we do at Star House, where we want our team and we train our team, one of our values is unconditional love. We teach them not to just create a welcoming space for our youth, but to make them feel wanted, seen, and known. And this is what sparks the healing in their life, that sets them on the trajectory to pursue stability and move forward. So my faith is strengthened by OSU research.
Yeah, and I will also say that I'm a very spiritual person. Social Ventures is not a faith-based organization, but we also know that when we meet people where they are, that with that non-judgmental welcome, we know that we can help advance our communities being stronger and our world being a better place. So with our work, with the social entrepreneurs who are advancing that important change, helping them understand the critical components of them knowing how important not only that their work is, but that we see them. We know how hard it is to do the work that they're doing day in and day out and run these multiple business lines to create social change. And we embrace them where they are. So whether someone is they're just starting out and they're just launching their business, or they're advanced and they're looking for that second or third round of funding, we're there to support them where they are without judgment.
Thank you so much. So it is CMC's long-standing tradition to take audience questions. Mantra Moody with CNC is curating questions from today's live stream audience. So for our in-house audience, please join Mantra at the microphone if you would like to ask a question. We do ask that you please keep your questions brief and to the point. Mantra, what is our first question?
Thank you, Laura. First question is from Emily Prieto. It's for Anne. Is permanent supportive housing an option for the homeless youth?
Absolutely. I mentioned the housing that we are part of, Carroll Stewart Village, but we also refer youth to all sorts of housing opportunities in our community. It's not just limited to what we offer at Carroll Stewart Village. Permanent supportive housing is certainly part of how we support their housing needs.
Renee Delane from Women Who Dare. Sorry, I'm not quite tall enough here. I would like each of you to answer this question. Obviously, you're value-based leaders. We can all see that. And you love humanity with your wholehearted love. What person in your life has most impacted you to become the human beings that you have become?
Say my parents. Both my mom and my dad. My dad was a very hard worker, but also an entrepreneur, and showed us that through entrepreneurship, you can not only empower yourself, but you can empower others, and to see the value and the skill that everybody has to offer. And then my mom, from a standpoint of just that unconditional love.
It's my mom and dad. I think they're listening right now, actually. They gave me experiences when I was a child where we were able to work together to meet the needs of vulnerable people. I remember my mom taking me along with her to take a single mom shopping at the grocery store. So that was just a part of our life growing up, and I'm so grateful for them.
I won't break tradition here. Hi, Mom and Dad. No, seriously, it's very true for me as well. So, thinking about that influence that both my parents had on me and continue to have, thankfully, and just really building that foundation and taking me, just even starting in Sunday school. And I remember seeing an image. This missionary came and was sharing images somewhere in Africa. I don't even know where. And I remember seeing this picture, and I must have been, 7, 8 years old, a picture of this starving child. And I remember going to my mom and saying, in my 8-year-old mind, did the cameraman or woman, did the cameraman give food to that person, that kid? And those were the things, like our family did not travel internationally. Going to Canada was a crazy adventure. I could say that now because I've been to like 30 countries or something. But it was really instilling that work ethic and that compassion and willingness to help others.
This question is from Carol Mary. What are the other underserved audiences in Central Ohio that need to be helped in similar ways? Who is being overlooked, and are there initiatives for those audiences?
The first group that comes to mind is young people aging out of foster care. That is represented by half of the young people at Star House, and I'm looking at folks from Buckeye Ranch here. But we need more emphasis on ensuring that young people, while they're in foster care, are getting the trauma support that they need. Opportunities to connect with mentors. Mentoring has been proven more successful than therapy for young people who've experienced complex trauma. So I encourage you to consider mentoring young, vulnerable people in our community.
I would agree that, I would also amplify mental health. I think that mental health mental wellness is something that is still a stigma and needs to not be a stigma. We need to make sure that there are the supports available because that so often, if you look at the underlying cause of homelessness, of addiction, it is rooted in that mental wellness, and I would love to see more support there.
Yeah, we live in a broken world. That's not a surprise to anybody here, and it's all around us. It's in Columbus. It's around the world, and I think that we all have an opportunity to care and to do something and to be radical in how we do that. There's so many issues we can't even list them here, but I agree with my panelists here.
Please.
Hi there.
Yes.
My name's Clyde Compton. I'm a MBA and a founder of a social enterprise at The Ohio State University. Very proud. I have a question about dignity and thusly like inclusion, and I'll try to be concise. But when we build nonprofits or for-profits that are social ventures, how do we build them in a way that gives people who can have access to them dignity? And let me frame this a little bit. So Matt Habish, CEO of the Mid-Ohio Food Collective, one of his favorite things to say is that most people who come and use that service are coming 3 or 4 times a year, and they're usually coming at the end of the month, not when they need it most. So instead of doing preventative care, we're putting out fires. So going back to my question, when we are building and shaping these nonprofits, how do we give people dignity so that we can give them a chance before it gets really bad? Does that make sense?
Certainly does. Thank you so much for asking that question. Collective wisdom is essential, and collective wisdom in making decisions and starting anything new includes ensuring that there are people with lived experience at the table. How we create spaces for collective wisdom like that at Star House is we have a youth advisory council that meets once a week where anybody in the house can come together and share ideas, concerns, or ideas for new programs. They're also vetting each and every one of our new initiatives. We want to make sure we're hearing from them. We also have board committee members who are former guests of Star House so that our everyday decisions can be made from their perspective.
And I would tag on to that first of all, thank you for your work. And thank you for starting a social enterprise that is advancing change in our community. And I think in a lot of what we've talked about today is that laser focus on your customer. And when you have that person that you're serving first and foremost in everything that you do, then it winds up that you're focusing on what their needs are, and you have much more empathy. And so in my experience in working with underserved population, when you reach out as a person to person, then people are not hesitant to say that I need support or I need help. They understand that they're not going to be judged because there's just way too much judgment that happens with people who are in need of help. And so a lot of times they'll wait to get help, and if they know that they'll be welcomed.
Be real fast.
Today.
And it's good to see you. Really quickly, so you all are addressing large structural issues, and it's unlikely that we'll be able to philanthropize our way out of this. What is your tactic and relationship with local government in order to help them prioritize your needs? I know the social service budget for the city of Columbus is rather small, and we have $1 billion pot. So can you talk a little bit about how you're lobbying and or navigating that space?
At Star House, we're serving a population of young people that's truly hidden. And what we've found is when you awaken people to this need, the support is there. I think it goes back to faith, too. You can't deny that there's a higher power. If I tell you the story of how our revenue has increased to meet the demand and need for our services. But we're very fortunate to partner with government at every level, federal, local, county, city, and very fortunate to have their support. So I want to say thank you to them.
Yeah, and as Design Outreach, we do work with the governments in the countries that we operate in. The problem is the governments don't have resources, so that doesn't really solve that problem. The issue is, and we tell people this all over, the issue is not money. The issue is our hearts and where that money is being used. I remember reading an article, I think it was the Washington Post, about the amount of money that was spent on pet food during the pandemic. It was in the hundreds of billions of dollars, enough to essentially eradicate half of the world's water problem, just in what the American population spent on pet food in one 12-month period. So imagine a different world if we just prioritized people. And I have a dog, and I love my dog. But imagine if we prioritized people over our pets. It's revolutionary. Now, can we get everybody to give that much money to global problems? Maybe. if we had a change of heart. But collectively, I think we can change the world, whether it comes from, wherever that funding comes from, whether it comes from government funding, that they get it from somewhere, taxes or something, or if it comes from people like you and me who have lots of money in our pockets. The fact that we're sitting here means we're all very rich.
Time, but we're going to turn it back over to Carey Schmitt for concluding remarks.
All right, I hope you found today's forum interesting. For me, it's really helpful to see that the great impact that can result when you use insights and precision data and have a high standard, good things happen. So thank you so much for sharing those stories. Please make plans to join us at next week's forum. CMC presents 50 Years of Title IX Changed the Playing Field, featuring a panel of experts. Thank you again to today's sponsors, CareSource and Grange Insurance, and thank you to our online virtual seat patrons and to the Emergency Response Fund and the Columbus Foundation for presenting our live stream in partnership with the Columbus Dispatch. And lastly, of course, special appreciation for today's speakers, Ann Bischoff, Greg Bixler, Vicki Bowen-Hughes, and our host, Laura Smith. And thank you for joining us, both here in the room and online. We could not do this without you. We look forward to seeing you next week as CMC presents another community conversation. Thank you so much.